Jonny, it's good to meet with you again,
Yeah, you too.
and very interesting to have met you a few months ago at the symposium talking about mental health and hearing about your own background.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about how where you started life
Yeah.
and things that led up to this very eventful day in your
Sure.
life.
Sure. Yeah, so I was born 1987 in northwest London, and I had a happy childhood. I'd say I've got good memories. My earliest memories are really happy. Then something changed when I was about 3, 4 years old. I'd say my behaviour changed. I became very isolated and quite violent as well. My parents took me to see a child psychologist. I remember seeing this child psychologist for a while, and we worked together. I mean, I was at school, I was doing really well academically, but outside of that, I was struggling. And when I was 10, I started to hear a voice in my head. I started having delusions. But again, at school, I was just kind of excelling ahead. And I didn't tell anyone about what was going on. When I was 16, it became a real problem. It was okay for the first few years, from 10 till about 16. I was hearing a friendly voice and I liked it being there. And then when I was 16, that's when things began to change, and I began to get very depressed. And then when I was 17, I didn't tell anyone what was going on because I was embarrassed and ashamed. When I was 17, I did go to the doctor without telling anyone.
Right.
I went to the doctor because I knew that something, it wasn't right the way I was feeling. These low moods. I didn't understand what was going on, but I just knew it wasn't right. I just didn't know what to do about it. I was also, the voice in my head changed. It went from being this nice, friendly voice to what I thought was the devil. I'm from a Jewish background, and I went to a Jewish school, and I was quite heavily influenced by my faith and by what I learned, and I felt like I was a really bad person. I was hearing this devil voice, and I felt like I'd done something wrong. This is 17 years old. I went to the doctor, and the doctor referred me on to what's called CAMS, the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service, so the mental health service for young people.
Was the doctor quite open to, appreciative of what you were going through?
Yeah, the doctor I saw was great, actually. Really took it very, very seriously, and was concerned. He was concerned, so he referred me straight away to CAMS, to this mental health service, and I saw a specialist. But there was a long, long waiting list for therapy, as there is quite often, and still today. There's a very long waiting list for therapy, and I gave up waiting. I think I waited a few months, and I just thought, I don't need this. I'm okay. I'm obviously not that unwell.
Yeah.
So I thought I was going to go off to university in Manchester. I was going to study drama, and I thought that by moving from London to Manchester, I had this thing that I thought I'd leave everything behind, and I'd start fresh, and everything would just be left behind. Obviously, it didn't happen that way, and university, that was when things really kind of came to a head, and again, I didn't tell anyone what was going on, but secretly I was going to the doctor. I was taking antidepressants.
Yeah.
I was seeing a counsellor, and
What were you studying?
I was studying drama at university. I was studying
Right.
drama, and drama was like an escape for me. I was acting all the time and being different characters, and that was an escape from what was going on in my head. I guess sometimes it was the only escape that I had, really, to become this other character, take on a different role, and be in another world. So I loved. It was actually an accredited drama school, so I loved being there. It was great. It was hard. It was great. But then as soon as I finished university for the day, it was really tough. And I'd go back into my world.
Yeah.
And that was hard. The depression, voice, the delusions I was having. I was drinking a lot, and often on my own.
Yeah.
It was really tough. And then by my third year, the first term of my third year, I became really unwell because I wasn't really addressing what was going on. So I became really unwell. I became psychotic, actually. and I ended up in the middle of a dual carriageway in Manchester, just out of control. It was awful. It was really frightening, and I didn't know what was going on. It was horrible. So I was taken to local A&E in Manchester, and then I was taken to a psychiatric hospital in North London, actually, not far from where I live, and I was given this diagnosis of schizoaffective disorder, which is schizophrenia and bipolar, combination of the two. And I mean, that was awful for me. That was just, I knew that I knew I was unwell, but you know, just that diagnosis really, it terrified me. I remember it terrified me, and being in this hospital was frightening. It was really frightening for me.
Yeah.
Lots of really unwell people, and people. I was there for a month in the hospital. People just, no one seemed to be getting any better. Everyone was just really, really unwell, and I was like, I can't stay here anymore. I thought I'd never get better. I really had that in my head. I was like, well, what's the point if I'm never ever gonna really recover, and if I'm gonna be in here for a long, I can't do this anymore. So I ran away from the hospital a month into my stay. This was January 2008, and I ran to a bridge in London, and I was done. I was ready to take my life. You know, I was done. And then I was on the edge of this bridge, and I don't know how long I was there for. I was in it was a place of despair, and this stranger came along and started talking to me, and at first I remember saying, you know, leave me alone. I do not want to talk to you. Just can you leave me alone? But he was very persistent in a very, very kind way. But you know, and he began telling me about himself. And he said, you know, he was a few years older than me. He was on his way to work in Covent Garden, and he began opening up, and I began to engage with him as he began to open up. And one of the big things was that he said to me, you know, I've been in your shoes, and I was like, really? And he said, you know, yeah, and look at me now, you know, I'm in a very different place. And as I said, in the hospital, everyone was so unwell. So to see someone that had come through it I was like, okay, well, you know, maybe if he can do it, then, I don't know, things started to change, my perspective changed. And then I started to open up, actually, because he opened up, he shared his story, I started to share my story and really open up. And he was fantastic. He said to me, you know, I'm meant to be in work, but it's fine, it's just you and me, and we can go for a coffee. And it was freezing cold, it was January.
Do you know how long you were talking to him for?
I don't know. I mean, such a...
Obviously a while.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, my memory is really hazy. I had no concept of time or what was going on around me. It was just, I was in this kind of bubble. So I don't know. But he was like, let's go for a coffee, and it was freezing cold. I was just standing there in a t-shirt for some reason. So you know, the more I talked to him, and I thought, yeah, okay, because in the hospital, it was difficult to talk to people. If I said to my psychiatrist or a nurse, you know, I'm not feeling so great, they'd just say, right, well, we'll up your medication, or we're going to have to put you back on the suicide, which is horrible, the suicide ward, which is where someone sits in the room 1-to-1, 24/7. That was what you got. It was never a chance to really talk. And here was this guy, a stranger, that was willing to take the day off work or the morning off work and just talk, and no judgment, and no like, oh, we're gonna medicate you, or just talk, and him listen. So eventually I agreed, and he helped me. I was on the edge. I'd climbed over the railings on Waterloo Bridge, and I was on the edge, and he helped me back over to the pavement, and I didn't know what was going on behind me. I had no idea it was facing the water. Behind me there was a police car and an ambulance waiting. Police charged out as soon as I got to the pavement, and I thought, oh, I don't want to go with them. You know, I want to be with this guy.
Yeah.
I tried to get back over the bridge, and they had to restrain me and handcuff me, and they took me away. And that was the last time I saw this stranger. And they took me to St Thomas's Hospital nearby, and they sectioned me. It was very just traumatic. I think it was quite traumatic.
For somebody who was in a state.
Yeah, exactly, already. So just their treatment of me was, I don't know, I think it could have been better, to be honest. But anyway, I was sectioned, and but something had changed. Something had changed because of this interaction that I had, and honestly, just hearing someone say, "I've been there and I got better," and he said to me as well, he said, I think you'll get better," and no one had said that to me before. Just very sort of
The first glimpse of hope.
Yeah, absolutely, it was. No, I had never had hope before, but he changed that for me, and I had to go back to the hospital that I ran away from, and everyone was really not angry, but disappointed that I'd run away and I hadn't said what was going on, and it was, and I was sectioned as well, so you have to stay in for a period of time when you're sectioned. You're not allowed to leave. It was difficult, but as I said, I had some hope from talking to this guy, and eventually I was discharged just before I turned 21, and it was quite difficult next few years. Actually, it was quite difficult next few years.
How were your parents coping with this happening at that stage?
It was difficult. It was difficult because it was a shock. I'd hidden it really well for all those years. They had no idea. They had none of us were educated around mental illness or anything like that, so no idea what was going on, and given very little information and support. It was a very difficult time. I mean, now, nowadays people do talk a little bit more about mental health. Back then in 2008 there was more of a stigma, so it was hard for them. It was really hard for them, for my older brother as well. It was really difficult. It's really difficult. But the next few years for me, and for them as well, I just couldn't move forwards. I couldn't come to terms with what was going on. I couldn't, all my friends that were graduating from university, they were getting jobs, and I just felt kind of stuck. I just couldn't move. I did go back to university actually, and I did graduate, but I lost all interest, and my passion for theatre and drama just went.
How long was the gap between you experiencing all of this and going back to university? Was it the following year?
Following year, actually, yeah.
Following year.
I just wanted to get over and done with.
Yeah.
I wasn't interested. I just felt, well, people said to me, you've come this far in your degree, you might as well finish it off, and
yes.
And I did. I wasn't interested, but yeah, I did. I didn't have interest in anything anymore, really. It was a strange time. Really strange time. And I wasn't talking about what was going on. I was embarrassed. It was awful. And then, there was a moment that things changed. There was a catalyst. That was a family friend of ours. He had a heart attack, and I spoke to him. He had a massive heart attack and had a bypass. And I spoke to him afterwards, and we sat for ages, and he said to me, everything that he'd been through. He talked me through the whole experience, the physical side of it, but emotional as well, very emotional. And I sat there thinking, why can he talk about his heart, his physical health, so openly, and I can't talk about what happened to me because of stigma and shame and embarrassment. I thought, this isn't right. And then I went home that night and I made a video. I just got my, whatever phone it was at the time, my phone out, and I pressed record, and I made this video just about everything that had happened, and I put it online because I really wanted to just reach other people and hear from other people that had gone through such experiences that I went through. I knew no one at that time. I knew no one that had a mental health issue. I think in the Jewish community especially, at that time there was more stigma. None of my friends had spoken about it. It was just all very taboo. So I put this video online, just desperate to find someone that would connect to it, really, and
Yes.
people did, People did. It was made from around the world. And I started making more and more of these videos because they helped me, and it seemed they were helping other people as well because people could identify things in them. So I made more and more and more, and then I began talking publicly about it because it built my confidence to talk about. And the more I spoke, the less shame and embarrassment and stigma. The more I spoke about it, And so I did. I began getting involved with charities and organisations like Mind, National Mental Health Charity Mind, and Rethink Mental Illness, Samaritans, and began doing lots of work with them, like speaking at events and doing projects for them. And the more I did it, the more I realised how many people are affected by mental health issues.
It's interesting that you're talking about 2008, and here we are, 2016. It's only 8 years later, so it's actually a very short time. And the other thing, of course, is just while you're talking about this and video and internet and so on, just thinking to myself, if this had been 30 years earlier,
I know,
you wouldn't have had that opportunity to
it's true.
to go through the process that you've been through to develop things.
It's true, very true. I don't know. I mean, I can't imagine how things would have turned out, if it was 30 years ago. I can't imagine. But for me, I've used video and social media and all of that a lot in terms of my work, and so I got involved with mental health campaigning, visiting hospitals and prisons and services to see the situation. And in this country, well, and other countries around the world, mental health is severely underfunded. Things like research, 90% of research budget goes on physical health, such as cancer, and just 10% on mental health, which is, it's not right. Really, and it's getting worse in terms of things like funding. More and more cuts to the mental health service in this country, which is really concerning. And then I got involved with, because I was doing these videos on my own, I then got involved with bigger production companies to make films on mental health, and I presented a documentary actually for BBC 3, and then most recently there was a documentary for Channel 4 that I did, which was about my story. And in 2014, I worked with the charity Rethink Mental Illness to launch a campaign to actually find the guy on the bridge.
So it was actually 6 years.
It was 6 years.
After
It was
the event.
exactly 6 years to the day that we met on the bridge. We launched this campaign. It was a kind of for them. They said, we want to raise awareness, and it was a way of doing that. So we launched the campaign 6 years to the day to find this guy, and I really, I just didn't think we'd find him. I just couldn't remember anything about him, even his name. I called it the Find Mike campaign. I didn't know his name. But we launched it, and to our amazement, it went viral. People started talking about it all over, not just the UK, but the world, in Australia and South Africa and Canada. There was lots of activity and people messaging. I mean, the most unbelievable messages from all over the world, from Mexico City to Rome. Wow, it's just unbelievable. And the campaign lasted for 2 weeks, trying to find this guy. Did lots of media, lots of press, and then 2 weeks into the campaign, he came forwards.
Because just to interrupt you a minute, I remember when you spoke about this when I first met you, you talked about the people that came forwards.
Yeah, there was 38 people that came forwards in between actually finding him. 38 people came forwards and said, it could have been me on the bridge actually, because I did stop someone. And I mean... So
that 38 other people had been going through a similar process to you, and somebody had intervened.
Yeah, absolutely, which is, in London, I mean, London, I grew up in London, and it can be a difficult place at times. Everyone's kind of in their own world, and it's very busy, everyone's rushing around, so it's not, I think it's great to think that there are people out there looking out for one another and, helping people in that situation. And I only met one of them. I only met one of the 38, but it's just, it's very, it's quite extraordinary, This guy, stopped someone on a bridge. He actually had to physically intervene and stop him jumping, and then ambulance came, and then he went on his way to work. And it's such a, I can't imagine how it feels. But the real, his name wasn't Mike. His name was Neil. Very different. But we met. We were reunited, and that was very. Well, it was phenomenal, but it was very surreal because I didn't instantly recognise him when he walked through the door when I met him, but we sat down and it was 5 minutes into it, and he made this gesture, like he made a gesture with his hand, and like suddenly everything came back into my memory, just through because he made that same gesture on the bridge, and it was just phenomenal. Just everything came back, and yeah, and we chatted, and then we became friends, and he said, you know, I'd love to get involved with the campaigning as well and do things with you, and that was 2014, and yeah, and today, you know, we're doing work together. We are involved with the young royals, you know, Prince William and Prince Harry and Kate, with their charity Heads Together, and we're running the London Marathon 2017 for them.
That's really amazing. One thing I was going to ask you is, and I know when you spoke before, I don't recall you commenting on this, but has he spoken to you about how he was after this event?
Yeah, no, he has. He talked about that. But yeah, absolutely. He, I mean, obviously it was on his mind for a long time, but he didn't. He only told his now wife and his parents. He just didn't want to make a. He didn't want to make a big deal out of it when he went to work, and obviously it was there on his mind, but and he wondered. The thing, he was disappointed because the police did say, "We'll let you know what happens," and they never called. So he was disappointed in that. But he always, because he did that same journey to work every day, crossing Waterloo Bridge. He got into Waterloo Station, crossed Waterloo Bridge to Covent Garden where he worked. He's a personal trainer, and so he always wondered every day, you know, did he come back? What happened? So. And you know, as time went on, it would sometimes come up in conversation with his wife, and so he always wondered what happened. So for him, it was a massive shock when it was his wife that saw it actually, and she was like, "This story," and she rang him up and said, "You know, I think this guy could be looking for you." And as soon as he saw my face it was in the media, he was like, "Oh my god," you know. So yeah, it was quite phenomenal, and Neil went on to win Pride of Britain awards, the annual awards, the ITV,
because of
what he did,
yes.
his act, and Russell Brand presented the award, and he was very lovely, and it was quite we were flown out to Texas to do a interview there, live studio audience. And yeah, we've done media all over the world. The documentary, so the documentary that I mentioned on Channel 4 is about that search to find Neil, and that's now going out in various countries. It's just gone out in Australia, and
when you actually met him face to face for the first time after all this happened, and you found him, that was on television. The actual meeting, the first meeting. How did that happen?
What in terms of where was it?
Yes, yeah.
It was actually above a pub, just a random pub in Vauxhall, and there was the cameras. It was very surreal, to be honest, very surreal. But you soon forget. Well, I forgot soon that the cameras were there, and just kind of completely absorbed by what he was saying, and we were recollecting that he obviously had more memory of the day than me.
Yes.
So he was telling me really what kind of he remembered, and yeah, it was extraordinary. It was really extraordinary meeting. Yeah, very, very, very surreal. Very surreal. But a very, very special moment. Absolutely.
And how do you feel about, now that this has happened and you're 8 years on and you're actually involved with such tremendous work helping other people, and of course you've got involved with the members of the royal family that are also interested to help and things, kind of where do you see your direction as the years move forwards now?
Well, I mean, it's with me, I never like to plan ahead. I mean, you're never quite sure. I mean, with me, my mental health, it fluctuates. 2 years ago I had a relapse, and it was quite a serious one actually. I ended up in hospital twice. I was quite unwell, I mean, I've recovered from that now, but you just you just never know, really. I mean, and that's I guess that's the same with any kind of chronic condition. You just never know, like if it's a heart condition, or
Yes, of
you
course.
just never know. So it's always, I never like to plan too far ahead. So I just kind of take everything as it comes, really. And I mean, for me personally, I'm very lucky. Things have just come to me, especially since the documentary went out on Channel 4. It's like I've been you get contacted by a business one day, a prison the next, and a school. My big passions are schools. I really want to get. We launched this year. We launched a mental health workshop in schools,
Right.
in secondary schools, which is going down really well. And that's my big. That's something I really want to target. Is because if you reach young people early enough, if someone would have come into my school and done something on, we had nothing on mental health. If someone would have done something around mental health, I don't know if I would have got to the stage that I got to. So I'm really passionate about that. Another area I'm passionate about is prisons. I do work in prisons, and I mean, it's 90% of people in prisons have a mental health issue, which is a very high number, and some of them really seriously unwell, and they, I don't know, it's questionable whether they should be in there. And the suicide rate in prisons is much higher than the national average, and really rising rapidly. So there's a lot of work to do in prisons. But I've also done work abroad now, internationally. I was invited out to India this year, in June this year, to carry out work there. And I mean, it was so interesting. We are, in this country, we are years and years ahead compared to a country like India. In a country like India, they still chain people up if they have mental health issues. I went into a hospital where people were essentially put in cages, having mental health issues, and massive stigma there in terms of mental health. So there is a lot of work to do, both here in this country, but abroad as well. And going forward, I'd love to continue working, doing work here, but also I'd love to do more work internationally.
And when you went to India, who was inviting you to India? Was it the government? Or?
No, it was an NGO actually in India that works with a lot of vulnerable people.
Right.
But they had no sort of mental health strategy, so I came there to look at ways to improve mental health, and also look at, because India's got a massive problem with suicide. It's 700 people every day that take their own lives in India, which is unbelievable, and it's got one of the highest, if not now the highest, teenage suicide rate in the world. It's a massive problem there, but no one really wants to address it. It's such a taboo, and in some areas people are still criminalised. You still put in prison if you attempt to take your own life but you survive. There's a lot of work to do. And I'm really interested in countries where things are working, such as Scotland. Actually, I go to Scotland quite a lot, and in Scotland they've had a really successful suicide prevention campaign that the government funded called Choose Life, and they've managed to reduce their suicide rate in a few years by 20%. Got a lot of work to do, obviously, but just that is. Whereas in England and Wales, the suicide rate is rising, and it's a problem.
Of course, talking is such a powerful element to medication, really, isn't it? It's probably the more than anything, people talking about. I mean, you hear of people talking about talking to somebody that is a complete stranger, because you don't have to worry about what people think because you don't know them.
Exactly.
And the talking part of it is so powerful. You were commenting before about the fact that you're working on a couple of books.
Yeah.
Can you say something about that?
Yeah, so I'm writing 2 books at the moment. They're not going to be out for a while, so a year or so they won't be out for. One of them is kind of my story. Since I was 12, 13, I've been writing a journal, and look, I haven't ever revisited those journals. A lot of them contain everything that I went through, but I'm going to take bits out and kind of use them to write the story. And then the second book I'm doing is what I'm calling so far is a book of hope. When I go into prisons and hospitals, there's a lot of people there that just they've got no hope, and there's no kind of, they're very lacking in purpose and hope in general. I've tried to work with the government. I've had various meetings with MPs and things, and it's very tricky. I mean, there's so little money there for mental health services, for suicide prevention strategy, and yeah, it's a very tricky one, and I mean, personally, I don't think it's taken seriously enough. So it's a really difficult one, I think, with the government. The government did make a pledge in 2012 to make, they called it parity of esteem, to make mental health and physical health treatment exactly the same. You know,
Yes.
introduce maximum waiting times for mental health, but it hasn't happened, which is very frustrating. So yeah, that's one of my, you know, as a campaigner, lobbying the government and working with charities and organisations to try and push the agenda in government, which is it's tricky. It's tricky, yeah.
It's been very interesting to hear about this, and thank you very much for taking the time
Thank you.
to talk about it. And I think, you know, obviously the work that you're doing and helping to develop the processes that make it more available to people is obviously so important. And I'm delighted that I got to meet you at the symposium, and that we've had the opportunities to talk about all of this.
Absolutely, no, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.